All right. So what this is, of course, showing is the Big Bang, the early expansion of the universe. By the way, this time of inflation only takes place like less than a second. But and then the universe expands at a relatively steady rate. We'll get more into that later. So here's something I want everybody to understand. This expansion of the universe, okay. Um, well, let's go back to this picture right here, all right? Um, so if you think about this, okay, so it's like a balloon that's being blown up. Um, if you were to sit there, if you stand in one place and you were to measure the distance to the wall in front of you, right? If you're standing in a somewhere in a room and you measure the distance to the wall, that's what you consider, let's say you measure the distance to be, exactly 10 feet or something like that. So you're 10 feet in front of the wall. And with this idea of the expansion of the universe, the distance between two points in space increases with time. Now, here's the thing. Okay, this is what I want everyone to make sure that you quite clearly understand this. You will never ever see that 10 feet between you and the wall ever increase. That never ever happens. All right. In fact, within your own galaxy, you're never going to notice that. Okay. It's only when you look and even, relatively close by galaxies, you never see the expansion of the universe. Right. It's only when you look to distant galaxies, let's say, 10 million light years away or more, that you begin to see the expansion of the expansion of the universe, right? Because all galaxies, greater than roughly 10 million light years away, are moving away from us, right? That according to Hubble's law, right? That's exactly the idea. All right, so um, we'll get back to we'll get back to this. So this time, I'll mention that this is really important. This time, roughly 400,000 years after the Big Bang occurs, there is radiation, electromagnetic radiation that is everywhere in the universe, and it's extremely energetic at that time. But as the universe expands, that radiation that existed roughly 400,000 years after the Big Bang, um, uh, as the universe expands, that radiation redshifts, and it redshifts more and more and more. The more time that goes by, the greater the redshift. All right, so um, just keep that in mind, because that's going to become really important to us in just a little bit. All right, so evidence for the Big Bang is the continued expansion of the universe, and this event that where it's actually called decoupling, just the technical name for it. It's when photons, when the universe is not so dense enough. How can I express it? When the universe is the density of the universe gets to be to the point where photons can travel freely and not be immediately absorbed by matter that in the early universe. All right, so that's this time of decoupling that takes place roughly 400,000 years after the Big Bang. So as I said, that radiation is being redshifted as time goes on, and of course, about 13.7 billion years have gone by, and so this extremely energetic radiation, which was in the form of gamma rays originally, has expanded and stretched, and in fact, in the early 1960s, this cosmic, as it's called, the cosmic background radiation, um, or sometimes it's called the cosmic microwave background radiation, because that energy that was in the highest form of energy that imaginable, has, as time has gone on, has stretched out because of the expansion of the universe, and it's now in the microwave region. And the other thing about that, and so this is a huge, um, this is the final evidence for the acceptance of the Big Bang theory, right? So before that, you had this, you had Hubble's law, but that didn't, not all scientists agreed that was enough to explain that the universe had an origin, because at the time of Hubble, so you go back to the 1920s and even earlier, people thought, in the scientific community, thought that the universe was infinitely old, that the universe had no beginning and will have no end. And in fact, Einstein, who has had a little something to say about all this, originally thought along those lines. He thought that the universe was infinitely old. All right, so anyhow, getting back to the 1960s, there were these two guys, Penzias and Wilson, who later on got a Nobel Prize because of their discovery of the cosmic microwave background radiation. And so it's the exact same signal in all directions. I'll tell you more about that in just a second. And then, after this was discovered in the 1960s, we made some measurements about the relative abundance of the elements. And if the Big Bang theory is correct, you should have about 75% of the matter out there is in the form of hydrogen, and about just under 25%, so roughly 24%, is going to be helium, and then 1% are the other elements, right? Because during the Big Bang, right? So going back to this, during the Big Bang, or really after this time of roughly 400,000 years after the Big Bang, you get the creation of hydrogen and helium, right? That's where the hydrogen and helium come from. That they are original material that forms the stars. That so the original stars begin about 400 million years after the Big Bang, and then the stars, of course, are the things that manufacture the periodic table, right? That the periodic table, the atoms of the periodic table come from stars that are going through their, they're towards the end of their lives, right? That's the whole idea of what stars are doing. Sometimes that's called nucleosynthesis, by the way. It's just a fancy name for creating the heavy elements in the universe. And of course, the heavy elements are created in those dying stars, and then new stars are born, like our sun. Our sun, in fact, we think is about a third generation star. That is, other stars have died and been born, and this, our star would be a third generation star, so that about 2% of the mass of the sun is metals, which are anything heavier than hydrogen and helium. All right. So scientific evidence supports the age of the Big Bang to be about 13.7. It's anywhere from 13.7 to 13.8 billion years old. Again, we didn't know that number very accurately when I first started college many years ago. And so, modern technology has allowed us to figure out this number to a very good accuracy. So this is all right. So here's Penzias and Wilson, the famous feed horn antenna. This is in New Jersey. It's actually a national monument now. these two guys were young men at the time. This was in 1962. They were hired by Bell Laboratories, AT&T, and they were actually trying to communicate with the early satellites. Right, that was literally their job. Their job was not to find evidence that the universe had a big bang. That was not their job. Okay, so 1962 they get hired by Bell Labs. They go out to this brand new antenna at the time, and what this thing, like, you can see this axis right here. The antenna can rotate in this direction, so that this feed horn, that's what it's called, the feed horn antenna. Like, all the equipment is in this little shack right here, and microwaves come in to here, and you can turn it this way, so it can turn, and then of course it can turn around on its own, on its axis, that is perpendicular to this direction right here, right? So you can turn this thing in all sorts of directions, and so almost immediately when they turn this thing on, so this, I forget which one's Penzias and which one's Wilson, but almost immediately when they turned it on, they found this background. That they discovered this microwave. Well, they didn't know it was. They didn't know it was the signal from the Big Bang. Here, let me see what the next slide is. Yeah, I'll get to that in just a second. All right, so getting back to their story, 1962, they start this, and it takes them a while to try to calibrate the equipment, and because it was brand new, and yet as time goes on, they find that no matter what time of day, so they're in New Jersey, right? And they said, okay, look, we keep getting this signal, and let's turn the antenna away from New York City, point it away from New York City, and let's see if that signal goes away. Well, they did that, but of course the signal stayed. They checked the signal during the day, they checked the signal during the night, and it always seemed to be there. One day they find that there's these pigeons. They were homing pigeons, actually, that were had nested inside of the antenna, and they said, they were like, oh, maybe this is what's causing that microwave background. These pigeons are interfering, or something was going on. And so they got one of the technicians to crawl up in there and to capture the pigeons, and they took them away. They took them 50 miles away or something. I don't know exactly how far away it was, but they took the pigeons away. But they turned out to be homing pigeons, and the pigeons came back. Right, so they still had the problem of the pigeons, and they eventually the technician took the pigeons far enough away, or I think he might have shot them. I don't know. Anyhow, so the pigeons were gone eventually, right? But they still got this microwave background signal. Again, night and day, no matter what direction you pointed, it was exactly the same signal. And then, out of frustration, they were like, okay, what are we going to do? We're tasked with communicating with these satellites, these early satellites. We're supposed to pick up microwave signals. And so they just out of desperation, they called Princeton, right? So Princeton is, a very famous university in New Jersey, and they called them and they said, hey, they described their equipment, they described the signal that they were getting, and it turns out that the guy that they were talking to, that they called the physics department, and the guy that they were talking to was actually had taken his graduate students, and was actually designing not something as elaborate as the feed horn antenna, but he was getting ready to uh, to build